If you live with a chronic illness, you've probably heard this piece of well-meaning advice 1,000 times. Just push through it. But for people with myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME/CFS, that advice isn't just unhelpful, it's seriously dangerous. So today we're going to break down exactly why this common wisdom can cause such devastating harm.
This right here, this gets straight to the point. That is a chilling sentence, and it captures the massive stakes we're dealing with. This isn't about having enough willpower, it's about trying to prevent real, permanent, life-changing damage.
So let's just call it what it is. The whole push-through idea is a myth. It's a dangerous one, too, built on a total misunderstanding of MECFS. And as we're about to see, following that myth has some truly terrible consequences. And this is what happens when that myth is put into practice. Just try to imagine that for a second. Your entire functional day, your whole life really, shrinking from 12 hours of activity down to just 15 minutes. This isn't some wild exaggeration. It's a tragic, all too common story for people who are told to just power through.
So why would anyone push themselves to that point? Well, the pressure is just immense. You've got external pressure from people who don't get it, who say things like, it's all in your head, or you looked fine yesterday. And then there's the internal pressure, this deep-seated guilt, or the desperate need to perform healthy just to keep up. This can get so bad that some people even turn to stimulants, just trying to force their body to work, which only makes the inevitable crash that much worse.
To really understand why pushing is so harmful, we've got to introduce the real villain of the story. It's a thing called post-exertional malaise, or PEM for short. And honestly, this is the absolute heart of MECFS.
PEM is the single defining feature of this illness. And it's not just about feeling tired after you do something. No, it's a delayed and completely disproportionate crash that happens after any kind of exertion. And exertion can mean anything. Physical stuff like a short walk, cognitive effort like reading a book, or even sensory input, like just being in a noisy room.
And when you look at this list, you realize pretty quickly PEM is not just about being tired. It is a full-body, multi-system crisis. It can set off everything from brutal muscle pain and crippling brain fog to what feels like the flu, and even serious heart stuff like palpitations. It's basically a total system shutdown, all triggered by doing too much.
So what happens when you repeatedly ignore those PEM warning signs and just keep pushing? You get caught in this incredibly destructive loop. It's known as the boom and bust cycle. Here's how this vicious cycle works. You have a good day, right? You feel a tiny bit better, so you boom. You try to catch up on everything you've fallen behind on. But that overexertion triggers a massive crash, the bust. You're then forced to rest, of course, but here's the most dangerous part. When you finally start to recover, your overall energy baseline is now lower than it was before. Every time you go through this cycle, it can steal a little bit more of your life away.
And this is what that cycle looks like in the real world. This person pushed to finish a project, and what was the result? Well, they couldn't finish it anyway, they were in a world of pain, and their recovery took 4 times longer than it normally would. That's time you never get back. So what's actually going on inside the body on a biological level? I mean, why does the body have such a catastrophic reaction to what seems like minor effort? The physiology here shows a system that's in a full-blown crisis.
The mobile phone battery analogy is probably the best way I've ever heard this explained. Okay, so a healthy person's battery charges up to 100% every night. But with MECFS, the battery itself is faulty. It might only charge to 40%, it drains shockingly fast, and it takes forever to get even a tiny bit of that charge back. Pushing through in this case is like trying to run a dozen apps when your phone is at 2% and you know the charger's broken. It's just not going to work.
This whole breakdown happens because the body's most fundamental systems are stuck in crisis mode. This model shows how the nervous, immune, and endocrine systems are all just constantly freaking out. Think of it like a smoke alarm that's blaring 24/7 even though there's no fire. It is exhausting and it messes up everything from your sleep to your ability to produce energy. So if pushing is the problem, what on earth is the solution? Well, the answer is a complete 180. It's a strategy that works with your body instead of against it. And that strategy is called pacing.
This statement might sound totally shocking, especially given what we're usually told about health, but it's a critical, life-saving fact. For decades, patients were told to do graded exercise therapy, or GET. The idea was to just exercise a little more each day to get better. But that whole approach is built on a complete failure to understand PEM.
And look, this isn't just coming from patients anymore. In 2021, a huge medical authority, the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, they officially retracted their recommendation for graded exercise. And why? Because overwhelming evidence showed it wasn't just useless, it was actively harming many patients. The medical world itself has been forced to catch up to reality.
The difference between these two approaches couldn't be more stark. Pushing is like constantly overdrawing your bank account and getting hit with massive fees. Pacing, on the other hand, is like being a smart financial planner for your energy. It's about proactively budgeting your activity to stay within your limits. It's about working with your body to find some stability instead of constantly being at war with it.
So how does pacing actually work day to day? It's all about making small, really strategic adjustments. It means breaking a big task, like cleaning the kitchen, into tiny little chunks. And this is key, taking planned rest breaks before you feel that wave of exhaustion hit. It's about switching up the type of energy you're using, so you don't drain one battery all at once. It's about slowing down, adapting, and letting others help. These aren't signs of weakness. They're the tactics of a much smarter battle plan.
Ultimately, all of this points to a new way forward. Pacing is not about giving up. It's an empowered, intelligent strategy for getting some stability back and improving your quality of life within the reality of this illness.
Pacing makes you ask some really practical questions. What is actually the most important thing for me to do today? Can I do this differently to save energy, like maybe sitting on a stool while I cook? Can I ask a friend to help me with this? Or, do I even need to do this at all right now? It's not about stopping your life. It's about being incredibly mindful about where you spend your very, very limited energy. And this final message here from the community is just so important. These warnings about pushing through, they don't come from a place of negativity. They come from a place of profound care. They come from people who have been permanently harmed and want nothing more than to spare someone else from going through the same thing.
So I guess it all comes down to this one question. For a body that is stuck in a physiological crisis, where the basic energy systems are broken, is pushing through really an act of willpower, or is it an act of harm? I think after everything we've looked at, the answer is painfully clear.